Hey guys, Omar here, and today we're going to talk about mixing flash with ambient. And this is a very popular technique. You usually see it outdoors. For example, you shoot during golden hour, and so you use the beautiful soft warm light behind the person, and it'll light up their hair. The subject will get a nice rim light. You then use a flash to light them up, and you have a mix of ambient and flashlight, and it looks beautiful. Now you can translate that same thing to indoors. For example, in this temple, there were some lights in the background acting as a spotlight, but I can use them in my photograph. So they're creating sort of a rim light on my subjects. They're creating a little bit of mood, but then I use my flash and fire up and light them up as they dress the Torah in the temple here. But you have to be careful with what's called mixed lighting. This is when there's two sort of lights from different directions and sometimes different temperatures hitting your subject. This is a problem even for experienced photographers, and sometimes you don't even see it. You look at the back of your camera really quickly, you may not notice. But here's an example of where I caught one and then fixed it in the next shot. So for this shot, what I wanted to do is I wanted to use the ambient room so that I could see these windows in the background here. So I shot about 1.4 or 1.8 and at ISO 320. But if you notice, look at the shadow of her chin on her shirt, and also look at this terrible shadow. So the location of the ambient room lights sometimes, and that used to mess me up all the time. Look, I'll go to an old photo. I've shown this photo before, but it's super embarrassing. The orange lighting, the ambient room lighting, is casting all kinds of strange effects on the people's skin, and then my flash really isn't doing anything. So here, coming back to this image, when I look down in the camera, I noticed that little shadow, and this was from overhead a spotlight that was in front of her. And so all I did was I knew I couldn't have my ISO as high as I wanted if I was going to shoot at 1.4 and 1.8. Now I could have stopped down to f5.6, but that's not what I wanted. So I stopped down and I ended up with this here. And so you can see the difference. Our before here and our after. And so in this one, I've now lowered the ISO maybe to 160, and if I needed to close my aperture to get rid of that light that's hitting her face and darken it up. Now let me show you a little demonstration with cap. When you're doing flash photography, you're always at the mercy of how much ambient you're gonna let in. You could completely kill all your ambient if you wanted to. If you wanted to lower your ISO to ISO 100, and I wanted to go to f16, and then what I'm gonna do is turn my flash on, and I could turn my power on, and this light doesn't have enough power to demonstrate here, but I would fire a flash. And for the most part, it's okay to let in some ambient. You see completely the background ambient we let in. It's even hitting some of Cap's shoulder here. But then we use our flash and we control our flash power. We can lower or raise our flash power so we can kind of match what we want. Now on purpose, I made the color of this light be a little bluer than the background. But when you're doing photography, I'll show you right now. When you're doing event photography, it's great to match both colors like this. And then in camera or in post, you can correct the color of the background and your subject. The problem becomes where the room or the ambient room starts to hit your subject. Now let's pretend it's hitting the top of his hair. Then it's a-okay because we throw our flash in and everything is, let me change the temperature of this. Okay, I'm making my flash blue again. We could use this hair light in the room. And if we want to light him up, we can light him up with our flash and he looks totally cool. See, he even has some light on the other side, but it's not bothering. That's still not a problem. The problem becomes where your room light or your overhead lights start to reach the person's face. And so what happens is they start to get new shadows like this. And if you come in with your flash all weak, well, now you got a mixed light situation. You have room light on the person and you also have your junky flash on the person. So a way to combat this, I mean, the best way to combat this is to try to move the person where, you know, if you see any strange shadows on their face and you still want to use the ambient in the room, try to move to where their face is completely dark so that you can control your flash a little bit more. If you cannot move the person at all, then you have to 100% get rid of that light from the room on the person, okay? You have to lower your ISO and you have to raise your aperture to completely get rid of that nose light. And then you have to increase your flash power as much as you can to get rid of it. You see, you can kind of see the light on there, and then you blast them with your own light, your own clean light, and you sort of combat that mixed lighting situation. All right, so from that you could see that you can actually use the room light effectively as long as it's not hitting your subject. So I'll show you an example of where sometimes you can't pick it up if you look in the at the back of the camera. So this is an example of overhead lighting. You see these weird shadows. And here's another example. This is where you just have way too much ISO because you think the room is dark. So lowering your ISO below 3200, 1600, sometimes the ambient room from the DJ lights or from whatever room you're in, it's just, they're too bright. And so sometimes you have to shoot flash at 400, 300 when you're out in a dark environment to kill the ambient room lights. So the moral is you can use ambient room light if it's in the right direction, usually on the person's back, but as soon as it hits their face or anything, you're gonna have to lower your ISO, raise your flash power to overpower those DJ lights or those overhead lights. All right, let me know if you have any questions about that, because flash can be tricky, and I'll see you guys next time.